There is a map hanging on the wall of the Situation Room in the White House. It has been there since 1961. It shows the world in Mercator projection. America at the center, flanked by two oceans, surrounded by allies shaded in blue. For 60 years, every president who sat beneath that map understood one thing instinctively. The blue countries are ours, the English-speaking world, Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. That is the inner circle. That is the family. That is the one alliance that never breaks. That map is now a lie. And in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how it happened. Every phone call, every threat, every signature, every market movement, because what just unfolded across 3 continents in the last 72 hours is not a diplomatic dispute. It is not a trade disagreement. It is the most significant restructuring of the English-speaking world since 1931, and almost no one is explaining it correctly. Welcome to Daily Brief. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now, because this story is moving fast and you do not want to be the last person in the room to understand what just changed. Let's go rewind 6 days, because this did not start in London. It did not start in Ottawa. It started the way almost everything starts in this era, with a single interview, a single set of words broadcast globally and received in the worst possible way. Trump gave an interview to a conservative media outlet last Wednesday. He was asked about the growing alignment between Canada and Australia. His response was not measured. It was not diplomatic. He said, and I am quoting directly, "Australia is a nice country, beautiful beaches, but they need us more than we need them. If they want to play footsie with Carney and his little Canada club, that's fine. But when China comes knocking on their door, they better not come crying to us." He was not done. The UK, Starmer is weak. He's got no spine. Britain used to be great. Now they can't even control their own borders. If they want to join the loser coalition, let them. The loser coalition. Stop. Read that again. The United Kingdom, America's oldest ally. The nation that stood with the United States at Normandy, in Korea, in the Gulf, in Afghanistan. The nation that opened its intelligence architecture to Washington more completely than any other country on earth. Called on camera in English a member of the loser coalition. That clip was playing in Downing Street within 40 minutes. According to sources familiar with the situation, Prime Minister Keir Starmer watched it twice. Then he turned to his foreign secretary and said 4 words, "Get me Carney tonight." By 9 p.m. London time, a 3-way secure call was active. Starmer, Carney, Albanese, 3 leaders, 3 time zones. One conclusion, the call lasted 2 hours and 14 minutes. We do not have the transcript, but we have the outcome. And the outcome is the Commonwealth Economic Security Compact, the most consequential alliance document signed by these 3 nations in nearly a century. But here is what the mainstream coverage is missing. The insult was not the cause, it was the match. The fuel had been building for months. 3 weeks before that interview, the Trump trade team sent Downing Street a set of demands. Sources in London described them as, and again I am quoting directly, colonial in tone and delusional in content. Demand 1, the UK must align its agricultural import standards with US requirements. Chlorinated chicken, hormone-treated beef, genetically modified grain. Britain spent 6 years after Brexit building its own food safety regime. Trump's team wanted it shredded in 30 days. Demand 2, the UK must impose sanctions on any British company doing business with Huawei or any Chinese technology firm. According to reporting by the Financial Times, this would affect $34 billion in existing contracts and destroy Britain's 5G rollout timeline entirely. Trump wasn't asking Britain to protect itself from China. He was asking Britain to blow up its own infrastructure to satisfy his foreign policy. Demand 3, the UK must redirect 40% of its North Sea energy exports to the United States at a discounted rate. Why? To help lower American gas prices before the midterms. He wanted Britain's oil at a discount to win an election. When Starmer read these demands, he reportedly said to his cabinet, "He thinks we're a gas station with a parliament." That phrase leaked. It went viral in Westminster, and it gave Starmer the political cover to do what every British strategic thinker had been whispering about for months. Stop waiting for Washington to become rational. Start building without them. Trump didn't just insult Britain, he insulted Britain while demanding they surrender their sovereignty. He called them losers and then asked them for their lunch money. And Keir Starmer, a man who spent 20 years as a human rights lawyer before entering politics, a man who understands the weight of words and the permanence of contracts, decided that the special relationship was no longer special. It was just expensive. If you are finding this analysis useful, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The markets are moving on this story in real time. You want to be here. Now let's look at the receipts. We do evidence here at Daily Brief, not rage, not speculation, evidence. Receipt number 1, the compact itself. This is not a handshake agreement. This is not a communique full of warm language and empty commitments. The Commonwealth Economic Security Compact is an operational framework with legal teeth, financial infrastructure, and a timeline measured in decades, not election cycles. It has 4 pillars. Pillar 1, resource integration. Canada and Australia, which together control approximately 38% of the world's uranium, 42% of its lithium, 29% of its cobalt, and 22% of its rare earth processing capacity, will create a unified commodity exchange. And here is the part that changes everything. Pricing will be set in a basket of Commonwealth currencies: the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, the British pound, not the US dollar. This is de-dollarization by design. Every ton of lithium, every barrel of uranium, every shipment of cobalt that trades through this exchange further weakens the US dollar's grip on global commodity markets. Pillar 2, financial architecture. The City of London, the largest financial center in the world by international transaction volume, will serve as the clearing hub for all compact trade. The Bank of England will establish currency swap lines with the Bank of Canada and the Reserve Bank of Australia, allowing trade to flow without touching the US dollar or the American banking system. Let me translate that for you. 3 of America's closest allies just built a financial highway that bypasses Wall Street entirely. American banks don't get the fees. American regulators don't get the oversight. The money flows through London, Ottawa, and Sydney. Washington doesn't even get a CC on the email. Pillar 3, defense industrial coordination. This is the one that has the Pentagon's attention right now. The 3 nations will coordinate their defense procurement to prioritize compact-sourced materials and compact-produced components. The UK's next-generation Tempest fighter jet, components sourced from Canada and Australia, not the United States. Australia's submarine replacement program, British nuclear technology, Canadian rare earth magnets, Australian steel. No American supply chain involvement required. They are not just trading with each other, they are building weapons without America. Pillar 4, immigration and talent mobility. Citizens of all 3 nations will receive expedited work visas and professional credential recognition across the compact. An engineer in Toronto can work in London next month. A mining specialist in Perth can relocate to Montreal within weeks. This creates a talent pool of 110 million people across 3 continents, a pool that American companies will now have to compete against rather than draw from. The compact is structured for 25 years with automatic renewal. 25 years, that means even if the next 5 American presidents are perfectly rational, the architecture is already built. The contracts are signed, the supply chains are hardened. Trump made a phone call, they built a civilization. Receipt number 2, the Starmer-Trump call. Let's go inside the room. 2 days after the loser coalition interview, Trump called Starmer. According to sources in Downing Street, the call was not requested by London. Trump initiated it, and within the first 3 minutes, it was clear why. He was trying to threaten Starmer into backing away from Carney. Trump reportedly opened with, "Keir, I like you. I think you're a smart guy, but you're making a mistake with Carney. He's a snake. He's trying to build a little empire, and he's using you. If you sign this compact thing, I'm going to have to respond, and you're not going to like my response." Starmer's reply, according to 2 sources with direct knowledge, was measured but devastating. Mr. President, Britain has signed trade compacts with dozens of nations over the last 200 years. We don't typically seek permission from third parties before doing so. If you have specific concerns about the compact's impact on U.S. trade, I'm happy to discuss them through proper diplomatic channels, but I won't be discussing them in the context of threats. Trump escalated. He threatened a 35% tariff on Scotch whiskey, Britain's largest food and drink export. He threatened to pull American intelligence cooperation. He threatened to cancel the planned state visit. Starmer's response has since circulated through every embassy in the world. Mr. President, Scotch whiskey has survived prohibition, 2 world wars, and Brexit. It will survive your tariff. As for intelligence cooperation, I would remind you that GCHQ is the reason your agencies can read the emails they read. We bring as much to that table as we take. And regarding the state visit, I believe the British people would understand if we postponed until conditions are more conducive to productive dialogue. There was a silence. Then Trump said, "You're going to regret this, Keir. You're going to regret this big time." Starmer's final line, "Mr. President, the only thing Britain regrets is that this conversation was necessary." The call lasted 9 minutes. By minute 10, Starmer was back on the phone with Carney, confirming Britain's entry into the compact. Trump threatened, Starmer listened, and then Starmer signed anyway. Receipt number 3, the market verdict. Money tells the truth that politicians won't. Let's listen. The moment the compact announcement hit the wires, the British pound surged 1.8% against the US dollar. The Canadian dollar strengthened 1.3%. The Australian dollar climbed 2.1%. All 3 Commonwealth currencies rallied simultaneously against the greenback. Why? Because global capital just identified a new safe harbor. 3 stable democracies, 3 resource-rich economies, 3 nations with independent central banks and rule of law, connected by a financial framework that doesn't depend on the mood of one man in Florida. The US dollar index dropped 1.9% in 90 minutes, the largest single session decline in 6 months. Gold spiked. Bitcoin surged 7%. Every alternative store of value rallied because the market is saying, with its money, that the US dollar is becoming less essential. The S&P 500 lost 2.4% at the open. Financial stocks led the decline. JP Morgan dropped 4.1%. Goldman Sachs dropped 3.8%. Citigroup dropped 5.2%. These banks earn billions in fees from international transactions that flow through the US dollar system. If the Commonwealth Compact routes trade through London instead of New York, those fees evaporate. Those profits disappear, and those stock prices reflect the new reality. Meanwhile, the FTSE 100 in London rallied 2.8%. The Toronto Stock Exchange climbed 3.1%. The ASX 200 in Sydney jumped 2.6%. The markets of all 3 compact nations celebrated while the U.S. market bled. Commonwealth 3, America 0. Receipt number 4, the Carney press conference. 40 minutes after Starmer's announcement, Mark Carney held a press conference in Ottawa. He stood at a podium flanked by 3 flags: Canadian, British, Australian, not American, 3 flags. And the absence of the 4th was louder than anything he said. But what he said was devastating enough. Today, 3 nations that share a common language, common legal traditions, and common values have decided to build a common future. This compact is not directed against any nation. It is directed towards stability, predictability, and mutual prosperity. We are not closing doors. We are building a house. And anyone who respects the rules of the house is welcome to visit. Anyone who respects the rules. He didn't name Trump. He didn't have to. A reporter asked, "Prime Minister, is this the end of the Western Alliance as we know it?" Carney paused. He removed his glasses. He cleaned them slowly, deliberately. Then he put them back on and said, "The Western Alliance was built on trust. We are simply relocating trust to where it still exists." Relocating trust. 5 words that redraw the map of the world. He continued, "The United States is a great nation. Its people are our friends. Its history is intertwined with ours. But friendship requires reciprocity, and leadership requires consistency. When those qualities return to Washington, this compact will welcome American partnership. Until then, we will build what needs to be built." Then he walked off stage. No drama, no celebration, just a man who has spent his entire career building financial systems, building the most important one of his life. Drop your reaction in the comments right now. Did you see this coming? Because I want to know. I read every single one. Now let's talk about the psychology, because this part doesn't get covered anywhere. Donald Trump's theory of power is extraction. You take, you squeeze, you demand, you threaten. And if the other side doesn't comply, you punish. It is the psychology of a landlord in a market where he thinks he owns every building on every block. The tenant has nowhere to go, so you charge whatever you want. But Canada has somewhere to go, Australia has somewhere to go, Britain has somewhere to go. They have each other. They have Europe. They have Japan. They have the entire non-American world that has been quietly watching and waiting. Trump kept raising the rent, and one by one, the tenants moved out. Not because they wanted to leave, because staying became more expensive than leaving. The tragedy, the real historical, generational tragedy, is that Trump didn't have to do this. The Anglosphere was his. It was handed to him. 5 nations bound by language, law, intelligence, and 80 years of shared sacrifice. All he had to do was maintain it. Honor the agreements. Show up. Be predictable. Let the system work. He couldn't do it. He couldn't resist the urge to squeeze, to dominate, to extract, because dominance is not a strategy for Donald Trump. It is a compulsion. He dominates the way other people breathe, automatically, constantly, without thinking, and the world got tired of being dominated. Now look at Mark Carney. His psychology is the mirror opposite. Carney doesn't extract, he constructs. He doesn't demand loyalty, he demonstrates value. He doesn't threaten consequences, he presents alternatives. When Trump threatened Canada, Carney called Australia. When Trump threatened Australia, Carney called London. When Trump threatened London, the compact was already signed. Every threat Trump made became a recruitment tool for the coalition Carney was quietly building. Carney understood something that is apparently beyond Washington's current capacity to process. In the 21st century, the most powerful person in the room is not the one who yells the loudest. It is the one everyone else wants to sit next to. Nobody wants to sit next to Trump. They're afraid of what he'll demand. They're afraid of the chaos that follows him like a weather system. Everyone wants to sit next to Carney because Carney brings a spreadsheet, a plan, and a handshake that means the same thing tomorrow as it does today. Trump is a hurricane. Carney is a harbor. And today, 3 nations sailed into the harbor and closed the gate. Starmer is the final piece. He is the one who surprised everyone because Britain, of all nations, was supposed to stay loyal to Washington. Britain fought in Iraq for America. Britain fought in Afghanistan for America. Britain opened its intelligence to Washington like no other nation on earth. The special relationship was not just a phrase, it was a doctrine. But Starmer looked at the doctrine and asked a lawyer's question: what are we getting in return? The answer, under this administration, is threats, insults, and demands. That is not a relationship. That is extortion. And Starmer, the human rights lawyer, the man who spent his career identifying when power is being abused, identified it. And he walked. Not with anger, with paperwork. That is how the British do revolutions. They don't storm the Bastille. They file the motion, pass the resolution, and put the kettle on. Now let's bring this to your front door, because this is not happening in marble chambers and diplomatic cables. This is happening in your bank account. Your dollar. The US dollar's strength depends on global demand. Global demand depends on the dollar being essential for international trade. If 3 major economies just built a financial system that trades in pounds, Canadian dollars, and Australian dollars instead of US dollars, global demand for the dollar drops. When demand drops, the dollar weakens. When the dollar weakens, everything you import costs more. Your coffee, your electronics, your medication, the gas in your car, all of it priced in a currency that is worth less today than it was yesterday. Your investments. If you own stock in American banks, you are watching money leave the building in real time. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup. They earn billions routing international transactions through the dollar system. If Commonwealth trade bypasses New York, those fees go to London. Your dividend check gets smaller. Your retirement account takes a hit. Not because the companies did anything wrong, because the president chased away the customers. Your mortgage. When foreign governments and institutions hold fewer dollars, they buy fewer U.S. Treasury bonds. When demand for treasuries drops, yields rise. When yields rise, mortgage rates rise. This compact just reduced global dollar demand by a measurable margin. That margin translates into basis points on your interest rate, and basis points translate to thousands of dollars over the life of your loan. Trump didn't raise your mortgage rate with a policy. He raised it with his personality. Your job. The United States exports approximately $150 billion in goods and services to the UK, Canada, and Australia combined every year. If these nations now prioritize each other's products through preferential tariff structures, and the compact explicitly encourages this, American exporters lose market share. When exporters lose market share, they cut production. When they cut production, they cut workers. Boeing sells aircraft to all three nations. Caterpillar sells equipment to Australian mines and Canadian construction sites. All of them are now competing against compact-favored alternatives. Your job might be fine today, but the ground beneath it just shifted. Your security. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance has survived every geopolitical crisis since 1946. But Five Eyes depends on trust. It depends on the belief that shared intelligence will not be weaponized for political leverage. Trump has already threatened to pull intelligence sharing from Australia. He has already used intelligence access as a bargaining chip with the UK. When you weaponize intelligence, you don't strengthen the alliance. You poison it. If Britain, Canada, and Australia decide to share intelligence with each other but limit what flows to Washington, American intelligence agencies go partially blind. They lose access to GCHQ's signals capability, which covers half the planet. They lose access to Australia's monitoring stations, which track Chinese and Russian submarine movements across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. They lose the connective tissue that makes American intelligence global rather than merely continental. Trump is making America deaf in a world that is getting louder. Now let's look forward. And I need you to stay with me here because every scenario from this point forward is a version of America diminished. Scenario 1, the retaliation spiral. The administration wakes up tomorrow and does what it always does. It attacks. A 35% tariff on Scotch whiskey, British automobiles, and Australian wine. A formal review of intelligence sharing with compact nations. A social media offensive that portrays the compact as an act of aggression against the United States. The UK, Canada, and Australia respond in kind. They restrict American access to rare earth materials through the new commodity exchange. The City of London begins actively poaching financial business from New York. European nations, watching the compact succeed, begin their own quiet conversations about alternative dollar arrangements. China watches all of this and moves to lock in its own resource agreements with compact adjacent nations in Africa and Southeast Asia. The spiral has no clean ending. It has only a floor, and we don't know where the floor is. Scenario 2, the off-ramp. Someone in Washington recognizes what is happening and acts before the damage becomes permanent. A senior cabinet official, a bipartisan group of senators, or an intervention from Wall Street leadership convinces the administration to open formal negotiations with compact nations. A framework is proposed that addresses the legitimate trade concerns without the sovereignty violations. The compact doesn't dissolve. It's already signed. It's already law. But American observers are granted a liaison role, and new bilateral trade discussions are opened in parallel. The architecture stays. The hostility softens. The dollar stabilizes. The intelligence relationship is quietly repaired. I think we are on the spiral path, but I thought that 3 days ago too. And then the compact happened, and it was bigger than anyone expected, so I hold my scenarios loosely. Here is what I know with certainty. What happened this week is not reversible with a tweet. It is not reversible with a tariff threat. It is not reversible with a phone call that lasts 9 minutes. The compact is structured for 25 years. The financial architecture is already being built. The commodity exchange is already being designed. The defense procurement frameworks are already being drawn up. These are systems. And as Mark Carney himself said, personalities change. Systems endure. The map on the wall of the Situation Room shows allies shaded in blue. Somebody is going to have to redraw that map because 3 of the bluest nations on it just decided that blue is a color, not a commitment. America didn't lose the Anglosphere in a war. It didn't lose it to an enemy. It lost it in a series of phone calls, a set of outrageous demands, and an interview where the leader of the free world called his oldest friends a loser coalition. That is the story. That is the history being made right now. And the question I want you to sit with, the question I want you to answer in the comments below is this. Is this the moment the post-American world order officially begins? Or is there still an off-ramp that Washington is capable of finding? Is Mark Carney saving the Western world by building around an unstable America? Or is he accelerating a fragmentation that will ultimately hurt everyone, including the Commonwealth nations themselves? And the most personal question of all, does this change how you see the next decade? Does this change where you put your money, your trust, your optimism? Answer below. I read every single comment, every one. If this video added something to your understanding of the world, please hit like. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm that this kind of serious, sourced, non-sensationalized analysis is worth spreading. Subscribe to Daily Brief if you haven't already, and share this with someone who is trying to make sense of what they are watching on the news but can't quite get the full picture, because the full picture is what we do here, every time.